Hi, I'm Rick Wetherald, elite coach with Athletes on Track and pro mountain bike racer for the Sun & Ski Subaru mountain bike race team. The first round of the 2012 Sun & Ski Timbra State Series is at Bluff Creek Ranch in Warda, Texas. Let's look at a few strategies and tips to do well in the race at Warda. Let's begin by looking at the start loop and the first part of the lap leading into the first section of single track. In any mountain bike race, the start is important, but in Warda it's less important because of the long open start loop. Off the start line, focus on getting a smooth rollout and steering clear of other riders as everyone gets clipped in and gets rolling. This is more important than getting off the line first and getting a hole shot. At the end of the long first straightaway, there's a wide sweeping right hand 180-degree turn that isn't shown here on the video because it was closed to course that day. This corner usually doesn't present a problem, but it is a 180-degree corner on grass, so if you're racing early in the morning and the grass is covered in dew or it's been raining, it's going to be slick. Just be careful. Now this section heading back towards the ranch house is a false flat downhill and things will get rolling pretty quick here. Because of the speeds, you can really take advantage from drafting, so if you're within at least 10 positions of your goal finish place, just stay put in the group and catch a draft for the next 400 or 500 meters or so. Now keep an eye out for the cattle guard that we're about to cross here. You want to know where it is so you don't get bumped into it when you're coming through in the group, but you also need to use it as a marker. Right after this cattle guard is where you want to move up. This will give you enough time to move up without pushing a bunch of wind, and it'll get you in position before you go around the pond. Now this next 200 meters or so of dirt road just after the cattle guard is where you want to do most of your jockeying for position. You can move up on the left side or the right side of the road. Just make sure you're done and in position by the time the course veers left off the road right here. Now this next section around the pond here, it's pretty difficult to pass or get past, so just focus on relaxing and holding the wheel of the guy in front of you. Now there is one more opportunity for passing as you're going up the very mellow climb here into the single track. If you need to, you can gain 1 or 2 positions going up this mellow climb, but I'd really try not to. Your heart rate's spiked enough already. Since it's early in the race, the adrenaline's spiked and you probably can't feel just how hard you're going. If you've got a handlebar mounted heart rate monitor, look down here and just double check that you're not going over 10 beats more than your threshold heart rate. I've seen many racers try to pass a ton of guys here right before going into the woods, and that really spikes the heart rate and it can pretty much ruin a race before it even gets started. So now you're done with the start and off into the woods. For the next few miles of single track, just focus on holding the wheel of the racer in front of you and using as little energy as possible to do so. There'll be another opportunity for passing in about a half mile or so, so don't freak out if you're not in exactly the position you want to be in. Now here, a few minutes into this first section of single track, the trail opens up into a little bit wider straightaway that's got 2 trail options right here. You can use this for passing, but just like going up into the hill, you only use it for 1 or 2 passes if you absolutely need it. The speeds through here will be pretty high during the race, so you don't want to do anything dangerous. While you're pre-riding, try to pay attention for any roots or rocks that may be on the side of the trail that can get you if you're following real close and drafting the racer in front of you. This is always a good idea because the speeds are pretty high through here and you can gain some from a draft. Now there's a smooth left-hand sweeper 180 at the end of this straightaway that's a good opportunity to illustrate 2 different cornering techniques that you can use at Warda. Sometimes I see guys going through corners that are real smooth, and just because it's habit, they always have their pedals level, in other words at 9 and 3 o'clock. Now most of the time, if the trail is even just a little bit bumpy, this level pedal technique is the right one to use. It lets you absorb some more of the bump and keep the bike glued to the ground a little better over the rough trail. However, with a corner like this that you know is smooth, it's actually easier to put more force to the tires if you pedal with your outside foot down and put all your weight on that outside pedal. This gets your center of gravity as low as possible and gives the tires a lot of bite so you can lean in hard and push hard on these smooth corners. Now here, Steen's going to illustrate a way you never want to go through the corner. See how he's got his inside foot down? There's never any situation where you should be cornering with your inside foot down. If you're in the habit of cornering with your inside foot down, you're almost inevitably going to catch a pedal at some point, and that leads to a pretty hard crash. So while you're out pre-riding, go ahead and hit this corner hard a few times to practice this outside foot down pedaling technique. Since it's an open straightaway, you can easily get speed into it and practice going a little bit faster into the corner each time to get a feel for the braking point of the tires and how to correct. This is a technique that you can use actually a bunch of places on the Warda course, especially out in the open fields when there's a 90-degree corner at the end of the field. Now a little ways into the trail here, still in the first section of tight single track before you come out on the open field, there's a section of roots next to a tree on a slight uphill that can give some riders problems. Here it is right here. There's actually two main roots on this little rise, and they start further apart and come together as they get near the tree on the right. Now you have three options for hitting this obstacle on the trail. The first one is to go all the way to the right where the roots come together to essentially make one big step. As you're approaching this section, lift up on your front wheel and place your front wheel right on top of the top root. As soon as the front wheel contacts the top of the root, you want to put all your weight on it and suck up on the back end while pushing forward and down on the handlebars to get the back wheel to float up over the root. You can see here that when it's done at speed, it should be one nice, smooth movement. Your back wheel might clip the top root a little bit, that's okay. Just as long as you don't have your weight on the back wheel, you have all your weight on the front wheel pushing it forward, it's not going to lead to a flat tire or pop you over or anything like that. Now the second option for hitting this section is simply to go straight up the middle, like seen here. This is the slowest of the three techniques, but it can be a good one if you don't feel comfortable hitting the line on the right. Just make sure you downshift enough coming into it to re-accelerate, because you'll have lost all your momentum by the time you get to the top. Now the third technique is useful if you're inconsistent or uncomfortable riding up the roots with either the first two methods, or if you're coming into this section in a lot of traffic. It's simply to get off the bike and run up the feature just like you're running upstairs. Now the important thing here is that you know ahead of time that you're going to run the section and dismount while you're still moving pretty quickly. You can see this rider here waits until he's stopped to dismount the bike, and if this were a race, he'd be losing a lot of time in this section. You can see here that if you perform a good running dismount and mount, you actually don't give up much time at all to a rider who rides the section cleanly. Now one tip that's fairly universal in pretty much all mountain bike racing on all courses, but is especially applicable at Warda, is how to properly race through tight woods like a lot of the single track is at Warda. What you want to do is through these tight wood sections here, especially during practice, focus on not how fast you can go through the woods, but how smooth you can do it and how little energy you can use while maintaining a certain amount of speed. Follow a buddy who's just as fast, if not just a little bit faster than you, and focus on using less energy than him while maintaining a 2 to 3 bike length gap right behind him. Coaches and racers, especially road racers, like to compare energy expenditure during a race to a book of matches, and every time you do a hard effort that is like sprinting out of a corner or say the start of a mountain bike race, you're burning a match. So what you want to focus on when you're riding through the woods here at Warda is going a pretty good race pace while burning as few matches as possible. Also, make sure you're downshifting enough coming into each corner so that you're not having to stand or crunch a gear coming out of the corner. It may not seem like a big deal one corner at a time, but there's 1,000 corners at Warda, and this can really add up. Another feature of the Warda course is the number of open, fast, flat straightaways that come in the second half of the lap. These present a great opportunity for drafting and saving energy, or if you're feeling really good, to close down some gaps to somebody that maybe went a little too hard early in the race. If you're near some competitors that are going about the same speed as you, don't hesitate to get up close to that back wheel and get a good draft. Even at only 15 miles an hour, the draft effect can be felt, and it's worth saving that energy because you'll need it in just a little bit when these climbs come up. If you're the one up front doing the pulling and you're ready to pull off and let someone else take a pull, try to do so in a corner, and you can pull off to the outside and maintain most of your momentum while you wave guys by on the inside. This way the line keeps going at a good speed and you maintain your momentum and can hop back into the line without having to re-accelerate too much. So you've made it through the tight wooded single track and the fast open fields, and now you're going to come into the last part of the Warda course, which is marked by some short steep climbs and some longer shallower climbs. Now a lot of people pay a lot of attention to the short steeper climbs earlier on in this section, but I think the long shallow climb, especially the one pictured here going up towards the old dual slalom course, has more consequence on the race because you can pass here and you're spending a lot more time on the climb too. Remember all that energy you were saving by not burning matches earlier in the race and racing smooth and riding conservatively? Well, now it's time to take that matchbook and just throw it in the fire. You're coming in close to the finish here, and some fresh legs or even just a little bit left can count for a lot if you're racing against somebody who went out a little bit too hard and didn't conserve. So if you're coming into the finish with a group of one or more other racers that you've been with for a little while and you're planning on making a move, this climb is the time to do it. It's the best place inside the last mile to make a move and make one reliably and really make it stick. So go hard up to the dual slalom course, and if you got anything left, get ready to punch it again over the top to make that gap stick. Now, one of the things you always want to pay attention to in pre-riding is the absolute last opportunity to pass before the finish. On Warda, this happens to be at the finish line. The last 100 meters or so are an open road that's slightly uphill. Now pay attention to the right-hand corner coming up that's right before the finish straightaway. It's going to be super important in a sprint because the momentum that you carry through is the momentum that you're going to carry to the finish line. The ground is so loose it's hard to re-accelerate for a sprint. Now you really want to resist the temptation to start your sprint by standing like you would on a road bike because the road's so loose you'll just be kicking the back tire around on the loose rocks. Instead, you want to accelerate as hard as you can while seated and then save the standing sprint for about the last 20 meters, so that's the only place you'll really get enough traction. So there you have it. Hopefully this gives you something to think about during your pre-ride and race out at Warda. Now if you have any questions specific to this race or really anything about racing in general, don't hesitate to contact me via email or just hunt me down at the race site. I'll see you all at the races.